This is Resonance, a podcast for leaders that unpacks the power of song, silence, and strategy.
We believe that great leadership begins with deep listening, not just to others, but to the still small voice within.
It's not just about being a successful leader, it's about being soulfully aligned as well.
In a world moving fast, Resonance invites you to pause and reconnect with purpose, people, and possibility.
We'll dive into some cool stories, celebrate with friends, and dig deep into the music too. 'Cause song has a way of saying what words cannot alone.
So whether you're leading a business, a team, or just trying to lead your own life with more meaning, this is Resonance.
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 Hey folks, time for another episode of Resonance with my pals, Randy Harrington and Mike the Monk Guy Ferrell. We're excited today because this is the first time we're adding a fourth. We talked about having a guest for a while, and I could not think of anyone better than today's guest. He's a dear old friend. Got to know him back in the day when he was catching balls for the New Orleans Saints, and by way of his Hall of Fame career at the University of Washington and the Huskies, and finished in Oakland for the Raiders. And he is actually being rewarded something where they're going to have a deal for the top Raiders in history. I'll let him talk about that in a little bit, but it's an amazing feat. Speaking of feats, he climbed all 7 summits. And while climbing the last seventh glorious summit, he was filming with NFL Films, and they wound up winning an Emmy for that Searching Your Summit, Mark?
The summit. Searching for the Summit.
Searching for the Summit. His book, Finding Your Summit, will be out soon. And there's a whole lot of summits. He's got a great podcast, and I'm excited about bringing him on. So let's do it without further ado. My pal, Mark Pattison.
Hey,
Mark. Emmy winner, by the way. Emmy winner. Did I say that?
And there's that too.
Welcome, buddy. And I'm glad you guys are finally getting to meet face to face with Mike and Randy.
Yeah, no, pleasure,
Absolutely.
honor. I thought Steve was enough and a handful just to do a podcast with him. And I've been on with him multiple times on my podcast, and he's graciously had me on his, 10 times or something. But every single time I thought, wow, I'm exhausted after I get done with Steve. I can only imagine going 3-on-1 right now. Zone
Come
defense.
Well, hey, listen, you're going to go 3-on-1, and you're in good shape to do that. Mount Everest was your last to finish the 7 summits. I know that you like to repeat the circle a little bit and do other mountains to stay in crazy good shape. But today, from one of your newsletters that I received, it was really interesting. And you and I had this discussion on my show by ourselves, but I felt like today the guys could really take it a lot deeper than I'm capable of. We talked about 10 steps to be the leader you wish you had. Yeah. And I felt like this is one of the best podcasts we had done on our own, Mark, but not with Mike and Randy. So the first thing was lead yourself first. You can't guide others if you're not clear on your own direction. Focus on values, discipline, and self-awareness. And this is what these two guys are all about. So do you want to take it from there, Mark?
Yeah, I think, it's so easy to fall in line with what everybody else is doing. It's really hard to separate yourself and go outside those boundaries. When there's a leader that's in there that doesn't have the value system that you do, and is not aligned with where you want to go, it becomes very problematic, right? I deal with this a lot right now at Sports Illustrated with, there's multiple tiers and layers and people in this greater media company. And, it's just, I'm so driven by doing the right thing. And at the end of the day, having been now with Sports Illustrated and being with a lot of different leaders and seeing what their faults are, it's just very interesting to see, who is willing to stand up when it's maybe not the most popular decision in the room. But by doing the right thing, I believe you're earning the respect of the others that fall down below you, and you're showing them the right path to go forward.
Absolutely. And I would even say, Mark, that's a great point. That first point, I call it leading from within, understanding your values and exercising character and integrity, and all of those things are really the foundation. Your first point is really the foundation of great leadership. It's how you do that and how you show up and be true to yourself.
Yeah, and I really believe, and I've told this to Steve multiple times, how you do something is how you do everything, right? And so for me, when I start that off, I start off with with a life of extreme discipline. And so what does that mean? That means I get up every single flipping morning at 5:30 and I'm out the door by 5:45. It's pitch black right now. This morning it was pouring down rain. I had a headlamp on and off I went. There's nobody out there that's filming me, and there's nobody. I'm doing this for me. And I know that do this, then I come back, I have my garage door open, it's 30 degrees inside my garage, and I lift for weights, and then I ride the Peloton, I get down, I do all these things. So I have accomplished an hour and a half of stuff, of which then I make sure that my bed is made and everything is tidy and ready to go, so that if I can hold that discipline for me, I know that it's a constant daily reminder that I need to eat the right foods. I need to lead again within. And by being that example, it's really like over time and all these different things I've done, it's just served me so well in so many different things and aspirations that I've gone after. And, you know, a lot of people have been inspired by that, but also they're inspired not because I'm doing it, because they wish they could. And everybody has that ability to do that. It's just a matter of you got to be accountable to yourself and have that discipline to do those certain things to make your life a lot better.
I think you just struck a nerve with the doctor down there, Randy Harrington. Randy, what's on your mind there?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The first thought was this idea that I had a guitar teacher who told me that practice makes permanent.
Yeah.
And essentially what he was meaning is if you're playing incorrectly, if you're playing sloppy, then that's how you're going to play. And that was the first thing I thought of when you said, you know, the way you do something is the way you do something, the way you do something all the time. That those individual
it's not. This is really key though. That the words that you just using, you were just trying to remember what I said. I said everything.
Yes.
Not something.
Right.
Everything. And so when it's everything, that again, let's go back to leadership. And, you know, with me, and you're talking about a company right now, I'm in the media, it's a big global company. It's just like you're dealing with multiple personalities and multiple value systems. And so how do you get people on board with what you want? And again, going back to how you do something is how you do everything. Again, you know, starting with within, as you guys mentioned, it's so key, I believe, in terms of getting people on board, to getting them to at least, whether they agree or don't agree, they at least respect you because of the way that you operate your life.
Randy, you got a rebuttal? Come on.
Pardon me?
Rebuttal?
Well, you know, I think we're on the right path there. I think the only thing I'm saying is that if the way you do something is not with grit and intention and focus, then that becomes as habitual as doing it with grit and intention and focus. So it is about capturing those individual behaviors that start up with the time you wake up in the morning and the first things that you do and that sense of ritual about it. The other thing that I grabbed a hold of is the concept. I think I heard it originally out of Nike, where they were talking about lonely work. And they said, you know, if you want to understand what separates athletes, you can look always to the lonely work, the work they do when no one's watching, with the headlamp on in the morning as you're running down the road. And I've thought about that a good bit. So much work these days that people do is what they want to put on Instagram or how they want to show it on social media, or they're doing it for that kind of thing. And I think what we're seeing from you is this idea that, well, that will never carry you the distance when the going gets very, very tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's well said. You know, metaphorically speaking, and actually in my practice, as Steve knows, I go out every single day, and I'm in the mountains. I live in the mountains, Sun Valley, Idaho. And when I'm out there, I've found tremendous amount of solitude and peace and clarity because my phone's not ringing. My Instagram is not on. I'm not on a laptop computer like we're at right now. And so kind of back to your whole point, being in silence and really everybody gets not everybody, but some people get their meditation through yoga or through other things that they do, and it's all good. For me, it happens to be moving. So movement is key within the mountains. And so I'm around all the trees, it's nature, it's birds, you know, butterflies fluttering, all that kind of stuff. And I just seem to get very creative. I might even write a song, Steve. I get very creative. And I just get very clear on what my path forward. And this is, again, this isn't like today. I mean, this has been a lifetime of, one of the reasons why it's not an accident, I don't think, whether it's a lifetime of achievement. It's been a lifetime of daily practice that has gotten me to these certain places. And because I have a love of the game, I love the process. That's where these other things like the Emmy or whatever, you know, have come. Like I wasn't going after the prize. I was going after just the process. And that's what has made to these different places.
When did that start for you? I mean, how far back do you remember having that sense of the switch being flipped to engage that sense of capacity and discipline?
That's actually a great question. I'm writing this book right now, which, hopefully will come out in the next 4 to 6 months.
I keep hearing about this.
Well, and because I'm trying to make it better and better. It's like I was with the Raiders this weekend down in Las Vegas, and it's this commitment to excellence, and that's what I'm trying to achieve. And so, answering your question, I was just playing better than everybody in high school, and that was my gift. Like Steve's gifts has been music and song and being able to put melodies together. My gift was athletics, right? And so I didn't really have to work until I got to the University of Washington, and it was a big ass wake up call for me. I'm 181 pounds. I couldn't bench my weight. I was getting my ass kicked by everybody that was out there. And I looked out there, and my awareness was I am way in over my head. And so what really took me was my would become Hall of Fame coach Don James with his pyramid of success, which he got from John Wooden. And that really helped provide a visual roadmap towards what I needed to do to succeed in life. And the interesting thing about that is, this belief system that you have to have, because if you buy all in and you got to get bigger and faster and stronger and, do well in the classroom and do all these other things to ultimately get you to the top of the pyramid. If you buy into that, the one thing that is not guaranteed is that success is going to follow, but it's going to put you in the best position to succeed. Now, in my case, I had to wait 3 years before my opportunities came up, and then, it ended up well. And so it was really like when the light went off, where there's a system. If you follow the system with a lot of discipline and you went at it with just insane intensity, that good things could happen. And I've applied that to business, my mountain climbing, and of course, back in the day when I was playing in the NFL.
It's insane. It's just insane. And another thing that I can tell you about Mark is that crazy giving gives us time. He comes to the Delta Soul every year, helps us raise money. He's one of the fan favorites. And when I say fan sponsors, people, me, all of us, my wife, Gwen, we love him. I mean, he's a staple, but it just comes from this place in this core that is good. So, and me knowing how hard he works at this stuff, he comes every year, you're going like, how come you're in better shape than you were? It's impossible. We're not, you've got so many good points. We're going to skip around. We're never going to finish all 10, but this one sticks out to me. Let me do this right here. Mike sent me this. Is it backwards? Listening. And I love this because Mark, you and I have had this discussion many times on my show. I think Mike and Randy as well. When y'all been on, I'm learning to listen. It's hard for me when I've been asked questions my whole life over and over and over and over, and having my own radio show. And now this being part of this wonderful show, I really learned to learn to shut up and actually ask questions. Asking questions can be really difficult. You stumble, you stutter, and answering them, you've been asked so many times, a lot easier. But let's get to listening. Listen more than you speak. The best leaders ask questions and make people feel heard. Take me on that trip a little bit.
Well, I think, again, like you just said, you can tee things up, but you can really find out where a person's coming from. And they can really show you the clues on where you need to go and what rabbit holes you need to go down. But that's really interesting. I think what follows right along with that is the power of curiosity, right? Because the more that you listen, the more, if you're a curious person, you can really learn based on what somebody's coming on their perspective, and really then try to address that and keep asking the question, why? Ultimately getting to a place where you can either come together, again, as a leader to really understand their point of view, or maybe you learn something new that you haven't thought about, right? Obviously, we all don't have the answers, but I think that listening component, when I've done my podcast, right? Usually I write it all down. I know all this stuff, and I just ask the first question I have on the piece of paper, and then I put my thing away and I just listen. And the guest always directs and leads the conversation. I just listen and respond to what they just said.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really. I'm trying to relate that to a live audience, and it's funny. You're not listening to what they're saying, but an audience takes on a personality. And when you've been doing it as long as I have, that personality, you're going to, I remember Madison, Wisconsin. I remember it's like it takes you back to a specific place and time, and many times over, and it lets you, it allows me and the guys to go to them rather than us trying to bring them always to us, because sometimes they're not in the mood. So I'm listening by way of feel and how they're responding. I know that's a little different, but for a live take and taking it to the stage, that is something that I've learned over the years.
Last year I was in Las Vegas again, and I went to the Shania Twain show, and that was just insane. We were in the second row, right next to the stage, and she kept bringing up these different people in the audience, and it seemed like because she does this she was doing one of these residence deals where she's there over and over and over again, that it almost made her shine even stronger because rather than seeing some of her, well, we knew all the songs. I mean, it was amazing just to show itself, but to make it interesting, bringing people up and interviewing them sort of like, why are you here? Where are you from? What's your favorite song? And it kind of put more depth into her as a person versus just an icon by engaging the audience like that. It was really cool.
Right. Yeah. She's investing in the crowd and there's a return there and it becomes personal, way more emotionally connected with your crowd. I love that. Randy, what are you looking there?
I'm thinking about co-creation and co-emergence again. I'm thinking that when a performer is performing, the audience is a critical part of the calculus of the success of the performance. If the performer performs the way I do in my living room with nobody else there, I can be fabulous all day long, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter. It's a completely different thing. So it is the audience, it is the speaker and the spoken to that make those things happen. And Shania Twain example, I think really it sort of knits that whole dynamic a little closer together. It calls out the fact that we really are totally interdependent with each other. The audience's success and value from the experience of being there and the performers are entangled in a way that's really magical and sometimes almost spiritual or ethereal. The last piece I wanted to kind of jump into on this, and I just want to throw it out there, I don't know if it makes any sense or not, is I think that when you go in and play for an audience, you are adapting to that audience. You're working with that audience as best you can. I think when you're climbing a mountain, I think that mountain has a personality. I bet you feel a sense of you and that mountain being in some discourse, either antagonistic or welcoming. Sure, come on, Mark, climb me, that kind of thing. I mean, it sounds a little woo-woo, but do you have that feeling? Does the mountain communicate with you?
Yeah, I think more than any mountain I've been on, let's go to Mount Everest. It's the biggest one in the world and, the most intense, maybe besides K2. But when you go there, the Sherpa community, these are the people that help take your stuff up and down the mountain and guide you and things like that. They have something called a puja ceremony. And in this puja ceremony, it's very religious. It's the kind of the whole backdrop of that. They bring in this Buddhist monk and there's all these chants and ringing bells and blessing. They bless our gear. They bless my boots. They bless my crampons. They do all this stuff around, and it's a like an hour and a half ceremony, and it ends, and everybody jumping around and we're hugging and all that stuff. But they will not climb that mountain without tying those two pieces, allowing safe passage for all of the climbers, not just the other Sherpa, but also the climbers that are up there. And so there's this really deep faith about what we're trying to do. And you even become more as one and trying to how are you going to maneuver your way? And are the mountain gods going to actually allow this safe passage? And for some, my tent mate from 2019 in Antarctica, the answer is no. He's still lying up there and I stepped over him. For others like myself,
Wow.
I struggled in a big, mighty way. At the end, when I was coming down and I'd run out of oxygen and I was blind in one eye and I hadn't eaten in 3 days, and my Sherpa left me and I was just sitting, there was the last guy on the mountain by myself. I'm looking around, you start to get very religious real quick, right? Again, really tapping into the mountain spirit and the Buddhist gods and whatever other religious faith that you have. Of please God, just help me get off this mountain in one piece. And, for me, sliding down and going through all that, it was a challenge. If you've
I'd say
never,
challenge.
you really, I guess what I'm trying to say is that you really never, in those circumstances, and it doesn't just have to be in a mountain, but when you're all 10 toes are right on that edge of life and death, which happened to me, it's amazing how clear life becomes real quick and what you value more than anything.
Let me just say one thing. That's Searching for the Summit that chronicled that climb by NFL Films 360, which went on to win an Emmy, so everybody can watch that. Mike, you are the ultimate man of faith. You want to take it from here? I don't want to say too much.
Well, it's interesting as I'm listening to Mark talk. I think he's already hit 4 of the 5 monk principles that I talk about and teach. So we're certainly on the same page here. And I'll start just with the idea of listening, and that's the point that we were talking about here. I don't know, Mark, if you're familiar with the Rule of Benedict, but it was written by a monk 1500 years ago, and the opening line of that rule says, "Listen with the ear of your heart," and it really talks of that idea of, in order for us to lead well, we have to listen. We have to be open. We have to be empathetic. We have to be compassionate. We have to be understanding, all of those things, because if we don't, it blocks that communication between those that we are leading. And so it's really, really important. The other piece, as you're talking about the quest on the mountain and that kind of thing, and kind of your routine as you get ready for that, the whole idea of rhythm. The monks, if you visit any Benedictine monastery in the world, they all do things the same time, for the same reason. Everything happens in a monastery based on the schedule that was mapped out 1500 years ago for them. They pray at the same time, they eat at the same time, they work at the same time, they rest at the same time. So all of those things. So it's that process that you talk about that really is really important as far as our being able to create excellence.
I love that. Hey, Steve, this is really important because you and I have never talked about this. I just want to riff on that point really quickly. I actually was in 3 monasteries in the Kumba region.
Mhm.
It's all these guys that were, shaved heads and orange like outfits. I can't
Yeah.
describe exactly what they are. There's a name for those, but I'm not sure what they are. But I mean, the bottom line is, going back to your central point, their level of, like, I think I'm disciplined, right? Which I am, but they are on just a whole different level, right? Of being able to do and sit, like we sat in when they're all praying, they have to be quiet, and one guy's chanting, and like every single day at that certain time, to your point, it's just like, I would be thinking about, I want to go out with Steve Avesar and, have some catfish or something, right? I don't know what it would be, but, for them to be that locked in was really impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask you, Mark, when you're on the mountain and you find yourself alone
Yeah.
and there's no one to lead but yourself,
Yeah.
what happens then?
Well, that happened to me many times. Again, we just talked about when I was coming down the mountain, but it happened to me going up the mountain several times when I was in the Kumba Ice Fall by myself with an avalanche coming straight at me, right? And I was the only one there, having to go across some of those crazy ladders by myself. And
Insane.
the word on the street is, never go through any of those things by yourself, right? You fall, you're done. You're going down hundreds of feet into these crevasses. And so the answer is, and I think this is like everything I try to centralize myself around, going back to the Don James's pyramid of success, is ultimately competitive greatness is keeping your eye on the ball, right? Following the process, that no matter whether I was in there by myself, there was an avalanche coming at me, I was crossing these different ladders and all that kind of, that's all happening real time. But the goal is still to get to Camp 1 and Camp 2 and Camp 3. And many of those times I was by myself coming off the mountain. I came down from the top and then down to Camp 2 by myself, going back down the Lhotse face, right? 45-degree ice face for, I don't know, 500 yards. I don't know what it was, but it's insane, right? But again, keeping super focused in on the task at hand to get you to that next rung.
One of my favorite books, and I'm sure you're very familiar with it, Mark, is The Seven Summits, the chronicling of Dick Bass and Frank Wells when the 2 old 50-year-old guys did the Seven Summits. And I've probably read that book 6 or 7 times. It's a really great documentary of them, tackling that seven summits. And they talk about all of the different things, the ice fall and, working your way through that. And I think it took him, well, Wells never did get the summit. Bass got it, I think, on his 3rd try. So,
yeah. So I'll give you a quick story here. So I got to meet Dick Bass. I was invited to come down back in the day. He and Steve Young, old 49er quarterback,
sure.
the charity raise down at the mountain he owned, which was Snowbird. And so I'd come down there, his book had just come out. And the night that we flew in, there was probably 6, 7 NFL players with the wives. And we're all sitting around, and there's a bar at the top of his Snowbird resort. And he came in And Frank Wells had just died. And Steve, if you don't know who Frank Wells, he was the president of Disney at the time. And so those two had come together and they wanted to do, they're the ones who cooked up this whole Seven Summit thing. And so
Yeah.
the whole is 1 year. They were going to go around the globe based on the time of year. And, if it's winter here, it's summer there. And they had it all mapped out to do. And they got through most of it, and towards the end, I believe they were down in Utah on Snowbird, and so they decided to go up heli skiing. And Dick Bass and Frank Wells had gone on the same helicopter with some guides, and the two wives who were also there had gone in the separate helicopter. They land, they all go out and they ski, they have a great time. Now the clouds are starting to roll in, so the guides say, "I think we need to leave." They jumped in the helicopters that they came in. So Frank and Dick were in one and the wives were in the other. In the last minute, now this is Dick Bass telling the story with tears is coming out of his eyes. I've never met the guy, and this is the first impression. And he was a very boisterous guy that, a lot of animation and loud, type of, and he's telling this story. At the last second, Frank Wells' wife comes over and she knocks on the helicopter and goes, "Hey, Dick, I don't hope you mind, but is it okay if I ride down the mountain with my husband?" And of course, Dick Bass goes, "Hey, no problem." So jumps out. He runs over to the helicopter with his wife on. They both all jump in. They take off. As they're coming down the mountain, Frank Wells' helicopter crashes in the side of the mountain. Everybody in the helicopter dies. Everybody. So as he's telling this story, he's sobbing and he's going through the survivor guilt on why me and what's next and what's my purpose.
I did not know that part. Wow.
Unbelievable. Well, you think about Stevie Ray, you think about, there've been a lot of music folks, Gentry with Eddie Montgomery, same thing. They were at a state fair and they were about to go and they were, I guess, did sound check and they wanted to take a quick helicopter ride. And Eddie goes, "I got to go to the bathroom real quick." And they go, "We'll come back and get you." And they never came back to get him. And that's just, Eddie has that guilt as well. Like, I was supposed to be on there with my sidekick, and anyway, it happens. So that really, oh man, it's just tough to hear.
Well, the thing about that too, Steve, which is interesting. It's just like these, and this is another thing about listening, right? And then also being inspired. So even though I didn't know at the time, because I was coming out of football and I was doing job and, having kids and all that kind of stuff. And I hadn't set out on any of this Seven Summit thing. But Dick when the book had just come out, so it was in his gift shop at Snowbird, and I bought it and I read it, Mike, just like you, right? Yeah. And I was inspired, like, that is so cool. Never thinking that like I'd be part of this whole thing. And then when I was going through kind of a tough journey in my life 10 years ago, I tapped back into that and remembered the inspiration from Dick Bass had given me, right? That I was able to pull up and said, "You know what? Actually, I want to go do that and try to become the first NFL player to accomplish that."
Wow. That's where that came from. Wow. You just never know.
And I would add to that too, similar to that, when the financial crisis hit in 2008. And at that time, Mark, I was working with financial advisors all over the country. And I got off a plane in Charlotte, North Carolina, 20 minutes after Lehman Brothers had filed for bankruptcy. And my phone is blowing up with everybody trying to figure out what, I went literally in a few hours from helping people be more successful to talking them off ledges. And I remember shortly after all of that happened, one of the first books that I picked up was The Seven Summits. And it really was looking at how can I take this adversity and turn it into a positive for the clients that I'm working with.
Well, you're dealing with the impossible, and that's what climbing these Seven Summits to me and to any average normal person that's not Mark Pattison, it's not even human, it's Superman stuff, right? And so, all right, so this is something that I've always, especially now with social media, and we've seen people over the time, nobody wants to own up to it, deny it till you die, until people just either go away or they start believing what's not true. Number 6 here with your 10 steps, Mark, own your mistakes publicly. Accountability isn't weakness, it's leadership and action. Now that is something folks need to hear about.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and it took me till I was 50 to figure this out, but the more vulnerable that I was, I gained more strength and respect from others, right? And, everybody, so many people, everything, how you doing? Great, 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 right? And they never going up or like, what's going on? I just talked to a a buddy of mine that I heard through the wife, through the girlfriend, through, all the stuff that they're separated. And I talk to this guy all the time, and like everything is great, great, great. And I called him up and go, hey, just so you know, I now know about this stuff. So he goes, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. We're gonna work it out. Right. So, and he doesn't have to tell me anything, but I think the sooner that you can like figure out what's triggering all these different events and you can share, it doesn't have to be with me, but somebody close, you can reach out to and go, hey man, I'm struggling. Everybody in life struggles. And if you haven't struggled yet, it's coming. And that's just the way life is. So
not admitted to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just,
I'm appreciative of the fact that when you talked about your Emmy as something that came from, it was the result of a set of conditions and actions. It wasn't something you were seeking particularly. It just fell out of the process of the discipline and the focus and everything else.
Yeah.
So you would say that the Emmy was the dependent variable. It was the result of what happened there. And the same thing you're saying here as it relates to the idea of humility and, what are the conditions that are necessary in the sense of, if I'm trying to sort of fake everything's fine, then I'm kind of breaking down the potential of the actions that I'm in. And what's going to end up happening is bad stuff that occurs because I'm not confronting. I'm not being accountable to myself and to other people. I like the public idea too. Certainly accountability is something most of us would go, yeah, but this idea of public accountability is really a big deal because the biggest thing that we all walk around worried about is our egos, right? It's our sense of self as I present myself to you. If I don't think you think I'm okay, then I feel like I've got a big problem. So my question is kind of twofold. How does ego play into just your thinking about discipline and your activity? And when does it help you? When does it get in the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things that I can only talk from a personal standpoint, but when you're in the NFL, it is a gladiator. You're in the middle of the Coliseum battling it out. There are fights every day. I mean, people like throw up like ESPN or somebody will report, there's a fight and this was a daily thing. I mean, Lalo Zeta, the old crazy man was on. I was a freshman or a rookie when he was
South Dakota.
Yeah, the guy was insane, right? He was on steroids and he was going on. It was just not a big deal. But what serves you so well in the NFL from being the alpha dog, in the room and everybody, you're with a team of alpha dogs against another group of alpha dogs, does not serve you well in the world once you go out and once you're kicked out, right? And that's what I had to learn kind of the hard way, that not everything has to be, like so great. It wasn't really I had to. I had a great skill set at catching the football, but really nothing else. So asking for help was a big thing. And that's letting your ego go, because when your ego gets in the way of saying, I don't need help from anybody, even though you're struggling inside,
right?
So many guys have going through mental health, issues, a lot of it is just the ego is blocking you from your true potential because you haven't asked for help to go out and seek and learn and get guidance to something maybe even better than you never even thought was around the corner.
But folks that haven't played team sports or never not at your level, it's just totally different when you're dealing with Lalo Zeta. I mean, come on. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, how hard is it to say that's on me? No, that's on me, guys. I mean, I think that there's a magic and there's a beautiful thing when somebody goes up to it and goes, that's on me. I'll do better next time. And I think it's so endearing. And also it puts more confidence in that person because they're not going to just try to cover up the mess that potentially could get worse in their business, in their life, personally, whatever.
I think you're on the right track, Steve. And, everybody's on their own journey. That was my journey, right? I'm not on anybody in this room right now. That's your journey. But, again, getting quiet, listening to yourself, writing down your goals, whether you need to go out and pay for somebody to talk to, or you have somebody that gives you fantastic advice and can listen and really help guide in a really supportive way. Getting around positive voices, that's a big deal for me, right? So many negative Nellies are there to tell you down, and you got to make sure that your group of people, success leaves clues. That's another big one for me, right? Being around
I love
people.
that. I love
Yeah. And just like, and that's what I did again, coming out of football, even though it took me quite a long time to drop the ego. I started looking at, wait a minute, what's that guy doing? What's that guy doing? What's that guy do? And get them on my like personal advisory board made a big difference. Right?
I like that idea. Personal advisory board too. I think that's a fantastic thought.
I can't believe you never asked me. I mean, come on. What are you talking about?
Hey, you've always been on it.
No, Mark and I reconnected after a lot of years. Obviously, I was a Saints fan, so I was a Mark fan, Pattison fan. But with that said, so many years later, him and my brother-in-law went to college together. My brother-in-law played tennis at Washington, and he ended up in med school at Tulane while Mark was playing football. They found themselves at an LSU show that we were playing, our band, and back in the wild days. Anyway, bottom line was we got to know each other back then and reacquainted ourselves a little at a time, but then a lot at a time when it became understanding the need for Mark to want to give back. And that's when, I got to really know Mark. And, it's never a letdown, man. It's always uplifting. I can tell you're one of those positive guys for me, Mark. I can tell you.
Thank you.
Always, always, always. Do y'all want to jump into, let's talk about this. It's number 10 on your list, but I love it. It's popping out right now. Never stop growing. Stay curious. You brought up curiosity. Keep learning. The moment you stop evolving, you stop leading.
Yeah, I think that's just it. I think you're going forward or you're going behind, right? And so, what are those new challenges that are going to come up? Like I'm going through a little bit of transition in my life right now, right? And part of that is, I'm dialing it back just a hair, not a lot, just a hair. I was just in New Hampshire last week climbing Mount Washington. More people that you can imagine have died up there, even though it's not the highest mountain in the world, but it's also not Mount Everest, right? And so I was in the Dolomites a month ago climbing. I went 50 miles in 5 days, and then I'd come down and stay at a 4-star hotel, something that Steve would like to do, right? Well, it was great. I was having steak and wine, right? It was fantastic, but it wasn't sleeping on ice and rock and eating freeze-dried food, right? And being away from everybody for 2 months. I mean, that's intense and that's hard, and it takes a lot of mental grit. But, what are those next things? What are those next goals that I can put out there professionally? And I'm looking at some transition there, as well as personally, my relationship with Doris, as well as my climbing, which is really defined and really helps me continue to grow and think again when I'm out there and meditating about what's my next thing, what's my next thing, what's my
And
next thing.
and you're a dad, 2 wonderful daughters, very talented, who live in the city that stole my daughter in New York. But with that said, I love how engaged you are in their lives and their careers, but mostly their lives.
Yeah.
Really amazing.
One thing I talk about, Mark, a lot is a higher purpose vision and really looking at what is it that I can do that has impact, not necessarily just on me, but what has impact on others, what has impact on whatever it is that you want to have impact. And I think, you've embodied that with the work that you've done, especially with Steve's foundation and those kinds of things. It's really, where can I have the most impact, and how can that impact be created in a vision that I'm gonna go after?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably one of the greatest blessings it was just amazing the amount of blessings that came out of climbing the 7 summits. And it really wasn't the climbing the 7 summits. It's what happened during that period of time to my personal life. One thing that we haven't talked about today that Steve knows about is my younger daughter, Amelia, has had epilepsy since she was 6 years old. So if you can imagine having, multiple, and I'm talking 10 to 20 seizures per day.
My.
Oh, yes.
That was a huge win.
Oh my.
And lo and behold, she's on her own. She's living in New York City now. She works for a big brand marketing agency that own all these different companies, and she's killing it. And her seizures, along with medication, are now at bay. And it took a long time, 20 plus years to get there. And I could go on and on and on. But the bottom line is, to your point, is when I started to go after this, what the interesting that started to happen was that my NFL career started to become relevant again. I was being asked to do all these different things with the NFL. Like this last weekend, I flew down. The Raiders flew me down. I played in a golf tournament with them, and then I was at the Raider game and going from suite to suite. And all these great things have happened since then. But rather than have the light shine on me and like, hey, this is great. Well, how can Mark monetize out that? I went and I partnered with an organization here in Sun Valley called Higher Ground, right? It's got a metaphorical, right, semblance around that, and also like what the actual mission is. But the long and short of it is we raised about $250,000 more than anything. And that was also to start this campaign called Amelia's Everest within Higher Ground.
Okay, I saw it on your website.
Yeah. And so that's what that was all about, is to help people like Amelia, overcome. And I think one of the side benefits that happen is that on sold out a number of churches where it have some very big names, Peter Cetera from Chicago, and Merrill Hemingway, and a bunch of other people, that would come up, and I'd kind of do a podcast type interview style in front of this live audience. And, we had people, contribute to that. We raised a lot of money doing that multiple times, but I had my daughter come each time, and she stood up, and it was almost like somebody announcing for the first time, like, hi, my name is Amelia, and I have epilepsy. Like, I'm an AA person, right?
Yeah.
And they do that to empower them, like, hey, I'm owning this now. And you could see the change in her and the mentality. And I think part of the ultimate solution that happened towards her career was owning that and really claiming that, and then working on certain strategies versus becoming the victim in all this and all the other people with that money that, she was helping out with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That
I
is
think
a
we should
great
talk to
story.
her.
She's a force. She is a flipping force. Yeah.
I can see that.
Yes. I mean, come on. I mean, hey, just speaking of those things, once again, folks that haven't seen the documentary, NFL Films 360, you've seen other wonderful shows that they produced, but Searching for the Summit chronicles Mark's courageous journey on Everest, and which concluded his all 7 summits, which won him an Emmy. And then it's got a great podcast called Finding Your Summit that I've been on a few times, and it's remarkable. He's had a lot of incredible guests talking about leadership. Mark, you think about the coaches and your friends in your life that you've had and that you've made that you continue to spend time with. Coach Moore is a dear friend of yours, obviously. There's so many, but I wanted to ask you about your relationship with coaches, but you got me thinking real quick, because we talk music a lot on this podcast and how it affects the rhythm of work and the rhythm of life, and sort of the dots, how they connect with what Randy and Mike and myself do. For you, when you're climbing that mountain, or you're preparing for a big game in the NFL, whatever, how does music play a role in all of this?
Well, it's meditative to me, right? And I've told you, Steve, I've told you this, many times over, but, I have this, like, my climbing track of when, I'm going for it. And it just, again, it becomes meditative in terms of, I'm not blasting Metallica type stuff, but it's more like soft stuff with great messaging. This morning, when out in the rain for 45 minutes was my power walk. I had this meditative walk. It was just all more orchestra, type music. Sunshine has been one of the key, as I'm going, I need for like the extra, like, inspiration. Like when you hear a Rocky type music, a soundtrack like that, that gives you that extra, because when you're climbing and you've been going and you burn so many calories and you haven't really eaten. I mean, I lost 35 pounds, which I'm like Steve, we both really don't have 35 pounds to lose. And that's a lot, especially in 2 months when you're trying to power up.
Can you imagine that, guys, losing 35 pounds?
Yeah.
And when at the end, he's got to be in a better shape and in better conditions than when he started.
And you're worse.
Math doesn't make any sense, but continue. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's just, I'm just, the whole question is all about how does music play a role in your life? And I think it's a really important, component. I mean, everybody measures music in a different way. And for me, it certainly has helped power me up several times, difficult places, because I don't have to have cell coverage when I'm in Denali and I'm carrying 137 pounds on my back up the flipping mountain over crevasses, right? Which is really difficult. But I can, turn it in the mode where I can still get my music because I have them downloaded. And Steve is certainly on that track, and it's always really moved me in that way.
That means so
So
much.
guys, we're kind of running out of real estate here, but Mark, it sounds like you and I are kind of in the same boat. I'm working on book number 4, and you're working on your book. Maybe we need to be accountability partners to get them done here.
I don't want to talk to either one of you. Randy's got his books out as well, but come on, Mike. But Mark, I know Mark is like, he's in editing chaos. It sounds like he wants to get this thing so right, and it will be perfect when it comes out. He's used to making things.
I know that drill. My last one, I think I rewrote 7 times, Mark. So hang in there.
Yeah, I'm on 17. But the whole thing is that you're trying to. I mean, this is really summarizes that for me is that. Yes, I'm shooting for greatness, but at the same time, I don't want to make this all about me, even though the book is about my life. I'm trying to, like, how can somebody that's reading this be inspired by some of my life lessons that I've taken out? And that's what I'm really trying to shoot for and articulate in a certain way. So it doesn't make it sound like, well, look at me, and, it doesn't appeal to the average person because, I understand most people don't do the stuff I've been able to accomplish, but at the same time, everybody has a ceiling and everybody has got their potential.
Show us
Yeah,
your Emmy real quick
absolutely.
and your book cover.
You want to see that Emmy again?
I've seen it. We haven't seen it. Book
Where-
cover?
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Give me the Emmy. We haven't seen it on film.
Yeah.
Oh, there it
look at
is.
that.
There it is.
Oh, yeah,
There it
flying
is.
around. I love it.
Heavy.
Dun-dun-dun.
All right.
You
Well,
wanna-
bring us home, Steve.
No, I'll tell you, I'm going to let Randy bring us home. I think he can wind
All right.
this thing up in a nice
Well,
little bow.
First of all, I'm just deeply grateful for the opportunity to meet you and to breathe the digital air with you. And I would look forward to getting to know you and what you're trying to do with your charities even more. Very impressive. And I think that one of the things that I've thought about several times comes to us from another professor who recently said, you know, you are a role model, whether you like it or not. And for everybody, your behavior is shaping the behavior of other people all around you, and the behavior you're bringing has already made me think about getting my sorry butt up out of bed at 5:30 in the morning a little bit more. So, I mean, what you're doing, I think, isn't something we need to calculate or put check marks on. It is having an effect, though, simply by the presence of the reality that you're in and what you're doing. And I think that's what Mike gets to when he talks about the authenticity piece and the reality of it. We're also so grateful that you're bringing spirituality into this conversation in a way that is open and inviting, and it is aligned with your mission and purpose, as opposed to being something that's, you know, whatever. It's a part of what it means to be a human being, I think, and that's what I got from you.
Yes,
So we're most grateful and so glad to have you here on Resonance.
Finding Your Summit is Mark Pattison's podcast, and Searching for the Summit is NFL 360 award Emmy-winning film of Mark climbing all 7 summits, that feat. And our podcast, Resonance, is available everywhere you pod with my pals, Mike the Monk Guy Ferrell, Randy Harrington, and our first guest ever, Mark Pattison.
Couldn't be a better one. Thank you so much.
All right.
Mike.
Wonderful
you.
job, Mark. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys.
You're on, brother.
Thank you. Right on.
Thanks for listening to Resonance. Find us at resonanceleader.com.